Rain was pelting down on the floor-to-ceiling windows of Terminal 4 at JFK International Airport. The anxiety felt in the crowded gate area was palpable. Gate B-23 was packed. Over 300 passengers were waiting to board Continental Airways flight CA-815 to Zurich, and nerves were already frayed. Dr. Isaiah Monroe stood by the window, watching the ground crew work in the rain. 42 years old, with short-cropped gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses, Isaiah looked like a university professor on leave. He wore a faded gray hooded sweatshirt, washed countless times, and comfortable jeans. He had only one piece of luggage, a bag containing his tablet, some technical manuals, and a few items of clothing. In fact, this person was about to do something that would change the fate of everything. To those watching him, he looked like an ordinary, simple passenger. No one could have guessed that he was worth $2.3 billion, or that he had personally designed important parts of the plane they were about to board. So, if you saw someone who looked like this from the outside, what would you think? Isaiah took out his phone and checked his boarding pass once more. Seat 28A, economy class. He smiled bitterly. The company's travel system had malfunctioned and downgraded him from business class to economy. His assistant was mortified and had offered a better flight on his own credit card for the next trip. Just then Isaiah said, "Let it be. I designed the economy class seats on the 7087. I want to see how comfortable they are in real life." Isaiah also preferred to remain anonymous. He had turned SkyTech Aerospace from a garage startup into one of the world's leading aerospace engineering companies. He had achieved this by focusing on the work rather than fame. While other tech CEOs sought media attention, Isaiah avoided it. He published articles under academic pseudonyms, attended conferences in the back rows, and dressed as if he were still working in that garage. It might be more accurate to say that Isaiah preferred a life completely isolated from people, yet very close to them. The doorman's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the continued delay. We are experiencing a minor technical issue with the aircraft, and our maintenance crew is working to resolve it. We will begin boarding as soon as we receive permission from the captain." Murmurs rose from the crowd. Isaiah's engineering instincts kicked in. He took out his tablet and logged into the Continental Airways maintenance portal. As a consultant engineer for Boeing, he had root access to this system. With a few taps, he identified the problem. Error code 2847, hydraulic pressure sensor anomaly in the left main landing gear. Isaiah frowned. This sensor was part of a system he had helped redesign 3 years ago. The error was almost certainly a false positive caused by moisture affecting the electrical connections. Annoying but not dangerous. If they followed the rules, it would take the maintenance crew at least an hour to diagnose the problem. In reality, fixing this malfunction would take Isaiah only 10 minutes. However, this would mean revealing his identity, and Isaiah was not yet ready to give up his anonymity. But he wanted to help people. Would you want to be in Isaiah's place? Or if you were in his place, would you take the risk and reveal your identity? "This is absolutely unacceptable," a voice echoed through the terminal. Isaiah looked up and saw a man dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit striding toward the door counter. The man was in his early 50s, his dark hair with silver streaks perfectly combed, a designer watch gleaming on his wrist, and possessing the aggressive confidence of someone who was never used to hearing no. What a guy, unbelievable. This person was Victor Ashford. Isaiah didn't know him personally, but he knew this type. Spoiled corporate executives accustomed to first-class treatment and allergic to inconvenience. Victor said loudly enough for the people at the gate to hear, "I have a very important meeting in Zurich tomorrow morning. I can't tolerate these delays. What compensation will the airline offer its first-class passengers to make up for this incompetence?" The young woman at the entrance, Sarah, who was on the verge of tears, tried to maintain her composure. "Sir, I understand your frustration. The safety of our passengers is our priority. As soon as the captain prepares the plane," she continued, but Victor cut her off. "I don't want excuses. I want a solution, and I want to speak to your supervisor," he stated firmly. Isaiah shook his head and returned his attention to his tablet. He had seen this scene thousands of times. Wealthy passengers who believed their importance exempted them from physical and aviation safety rules. Isaiah didn't like these types of people. Who knows, maybe he chose an isolated life because he didn't want to be like them. 30 minutes later, boarding finally began. Isaiah waited patiently as families with small children, passengers needing assistance, and business-class passengers passed through the jet bridge. When his section was finally called, he slung his bag over his shoulder and joined the line. Everyone boarding the plane was unaware of what was about to happen. In front of him, he noticed Victor Ashford clutching his boarding pass and muttering angrily into his phone. "I don't care what the system says, Jennifer. I booked business class. This is economy class. Economy. Do Do you know what that means? I'll be sitting with ordinary people, he said, clearly revealing his true character. Have you ever encountered people like this in your life? Isaiah suppressed a smile. Apparently, the same system error that demoted him had also affected Victor. Karma had a sense of humor. The Boeing 787 was a beautiful aircraft, and Isaiah felt a familiar sense of pride as he boarded. He had worked on the cabin pressure optimization, the window shading system, and the advanced air filtration systems. In many ways, this plane was his baby. A huge smile of pride spread across Isaiah's face. Why wouldn't it? He had spent years designing beautiful things for people. A flight attendant named Nicole pointed to his seat, saying, "Welcome 28A," about 12 rows back on the left. As Isaiah walked down the aisle, he noticed the narrow space between the rows. This was a decision made by the airlines, not the engineers, and Isaiah had always opposed it. Economy-class passengers deserved comfort too. There was no distinction between people in Isaiah's life. In his view, all people had equal rights and should be treated equally. He found row 28. Seat 28A, by the window, was his. He placed his bag under the seat in front of him, settled in, and took out his tablet to review some schematics while waiting for takeoff. Excuse me, someone was shouting. Isaiah looked up and saw Victor Ashford standing in the aisle, glaring at him angrily. "You're blocking my way," Victor said, his tone condescending toward Isaiah. Despite all this condescension, Isaiah replied calmly and politely, "The window seat is mine. The middle seat is 28B. "The window seat is mine," Isaiah replied calmly. "The middle seat is 28B. Victor's eyes drifted from Isaiah's worn sneakers to his faded hoodie, and his expression soured further. "Of course it is. Economy class wasn't bad enough. Now I have to sit next to you." He gestured vaguely toward Isaiah, leaving the sentence unfinished but making his contempt clear. This was familiar contempt to Isaiah, because Isaiah had experienced similar humiliations in the past. Isaiah said nothing. He had learned long ago that dealing with people like Victor was pointless. Instead, he shifted his legs slightly to make room for Victor to pass. Victor shoved his expensive leather briefcase into the overhead compartment with unnecessary force, then sat down in seat 28B with a deep sigh. He immediately spread his legs wide, invading Isaiah's legroom. His elbow pushed Isaiah's arm away, occupying the armrest between them. "Could you remain calm after all that?" Victor said, "Sorry," but his tone showed he wasn't sorry at all. "Not much room here, is there? But I guess you're used to that," he sneered once more. Isaiah pulled his arm back and placed it on the windowsill. "Very comfortable," he said. Victor said comfortable sarcastically, then took out his phone and swiped through his emails with aggressive movements. "I'm the CEO of Prestige Properties International. Do you know what that means? I manage billion-dollar projects. I make deals that employ thousands of people. I should be in business class. I shouldn't be stuck here," he said, expressing his dissatisfaction once again. He left his sentence unfinished again, but it was clear what he meant. Isaiah adjusted his glasses and turned his attention back to his tablet. The Boeing 787 hydraulic system diagram was glowing on the screen. Victor noticed this. He leaned in, invading Isaiah's personal space to look at the screen. "What is that? Some kind of video game?" he asked. "Technical documentation," Isaiah replied. "Documentation for what? Do you work on airplanes?" he asked again. Isaiah replied, "Something like that." Victor let out a sharp, dismissive laugh. "Let me guess, you're a mechanic, one of those guys who tightens bolts and thinks he's an engineer because he can read a manual." Victor was actually going that far, so we'll see what happens. Isaiah didn't respond. He saved his work and put the tablet in his seat pocket. Isaiah's refusal to engage in dialogue with Victor seemed to bother him so much that he snapped his fingers close to Isaiah's face and said, "Hey, I'm talking to you," he added. "It's rude to ignore someone who's trying to talk to you." Isaiah turned to him, facing him completely. "I didn't realize you were trying to talk. It seemed more like you were making assumptions," he said, trying to explain to Victor what kind of person he was and how he treated people. Victor's face flushed. "Assumptions?" he said. "Listen, buddy, I've been in this business long enough to read people. Your clothes, your bag, your seat. It's obvious you're not contributing much to the economy. You're probably flying on a discounted employee ticket, right? You're abusing the system." He asked absurd questions. Isaiah said calmly, "I paid the same price you paid for this seat." "I doubt that," Victor muttered. "People like you always find a way to cheat the system," Victor said, moving closer. "Look, let's be clear. This armrest is mine. This legroom is mine. And if you have a problem with that, you can take it up with management. But something tells me they'll listen to me before they listen to you." Isaiah looked at Victor for a long time. There was so much he could say, so much he could do. But he had learned that sometimes the best response was patience. "Let people reveal who they really are," his father used to say. "Then they can't deny it later." That's why Isaiah was always patient and never forgot his father's words. Isaiah simply said, I understand. Enjoy your flight, Mr. Ashford, Victor Ashford. And I intend to enjoy myself as much as possible in this cattle car. Victor removed his noise-canceling headphones, probably a pair of high-quality wireless headphones that cost more than most people's monthly rent. As Victor took his seat, Isaiah noticed the woman in seat 28C. According to her luggage tag, Ms. Chen, a middle-aged teacher, was watching this exchange with understanding. Ms. Chen whispered to Isaiah, saying, "Some people have everything but manners," implying that what Victor had done was blatantly discriminatory. Isaiah smiled. "It's a long flight. I'm sure we'll all survive," he quipped. However, as the minutes passed and the plane remained motionless at the gate, Isaiah's engineer's mind kept returning to that hydraulic sensor fault. The maintenance crew had been working on it for a very long time. They were probably running the entire diagnostic protocol, which was comprehensive but time-consuming. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Daniel Rivers. I apologize for the delay. We are waiting for our maintenance crew to resolve a minor technical issue. We expect to take off within the next 30 to 45 minutes. Victor took off his headphones. 45 minutes? This is ridiculous. Flight attendant Nicole appeared with a forced professional smile. "Yes, sir," she replied. "What exactly is the technical problem? Because I'm starting to think this airline doesn't know how to maintain its equipment," he asked, firing off questions. "Sir, I don't know the details, but I can assure you our maintenance crew is very thorough. Meticulousness won't do me any good if I miss my meeting." Victor stood up and forced Isaiah to pull his legs in. "I want to speak to the captain." "Immediately," he said. "Sir, the captain is currently working with the ground crew. I can't disturb him," was the reply. Victor's voice rose. "If I tell you, you'll disturb him. Do you know who I am? I fly 200,000 miles a year. I'm a Platinum Elite member. I personally know the CEO of this airline," he said, belittling Nicole. The entire section fell silent. All eyes turned to Victor's outburst. Isaiah closed his eyes. This was going to be a very long flight, and it was about to get much worse. The tension in the cabin was palpable. Victor Ashford stood in the aisle of row 28, his face flushed, pointing his finger at Nicole, while passengers in the surrounding rows watched him with embarrassment and curiosity. "I want to speak to someone in authority," Victor said. "This delay is unacceptable, and if your captain can't fix a simple maintenance issue, he's clearly incompetent." Although the other passengers were also annoyed by the situation, they didn't dare say anything. Nicole's hands trembled slightly as she pressed her radio. "Chief Flight Attendant, come to the cockpit. There's a passenger problem in row 28, she said. Isaiah remained in his seat, trying to make himself invisible. He had witnessed outbursts from company employees before. In fact, in his younger, less knowledgeable days, he had thrown a few tantrums himself. But watching a grown man berate a flight attendant who was simply trying to do her job was particularly ugly. Nicole said in a tense tone, "Sir, please return to your seat." Victor said no, he would sit down when a real authority figure came to explain what was happening on the plane. He turned to the passengers around him. "We've been sitting here for over an hour. Don't you care? Doesn't anyone have somewhere important to be?" they asked. "I'll sit down when someone with real authority tells me what's going on this plane," Victor cut in. He turned to the passengers around him. "We've been sitting here for over an hour. Don't you care? Doesn't anyone have somewhere important to be?" A businessman in row 27 nodded. "He's right. We deserve answers," he said, making the atmosphere even more tense. Victor immediately seized this support. "Exactly. We are paying customers, not cargo," someone he said, and paused mid-sentence, his eyes still fixed on Isaiah's tablet showing the Boeing 787 hydraulic diagram in the seat pocket. Victor had been handed a golden opportunity. Now he could do what he wanted and accuse Isaiah. Victor paused for a moment, his tone now skeptical rather than angry. "Why do you have technical schematics of this aircraft on your tablet?" he asked. Isaiah slowly raised his head and met Victor's skeptical gaze. "I told you. I work in aeronautical engineering," he replied. "Aerospace engineering," Victor repeated, his voice tinged with skepticism. He looked at Isaiah's hoodie and worn-out sneakers. "Sure, I'm the Pope too," he sneered. He turned to Nicole. This guy was looking at the plane's schematics, detailed plans of the hydraulic systems. Why would a random passenger have access to those? "Of course," he said, leaving his implication hanging in the air. Nicole's eyes widened. "Sir, you—" she began, but Victor cut her off. "I," he said, "am implying that there is a major security issue here. This man is examining the plane's systems. He fits the profile of someone planning something. And considering the current delay in the hydraulic system, he made a dramatic gesture. Perhaps this is no coincidence," he said, actually making a huge accusation against Isaiah. "If you were in Victor's place and saw such diagrams and plans, would you react the same way?" A wave of fear spread through the cabin. Miss Chen in seat 28C held her breath. The businessman in seat 27 stood up to see better. Several passengers took out their phones. Isaiah felt a cold anger in his chest. This was beyond rudeness. Victor was accusing him of terrorism based solely on prejudice and the fact that Isaiah was black, dressed casually, and reading technical documents. Isaiah clenched his jaw and spoke calmly. "Mr. Ashford, you are making a serious accusation without any evidence. I am an engineer reviewing work documents, that's all." Victor looked at Isaiah with mocking eyes again. "Business documents? A mechanic's?" he continued, but Isaiah cut him off. "I never said I was a mechanic," he said. "Legitimate access to Boeing's confidential schematics? Because that's what they look like to me. Secret technical data." Victor turned to Nicole. "I formally request that you check this man's credentials. His ID, his bag, everything. Because sitting next to someone who's inspecting the plane doesn't make me feel safe," he said. Nicole seemed frozen. The security protocol was clear. Take it seriously, investigate immediately, and call the captain if necessary. But she could also see that Victor was using this protocol as a weapon out of spite. Yet she had to consider the protocol. If she didn't follow it, she'd lose her job. Nevertheless, she turned to Victor and said, "Sir, please return to your seat." Then she turned to Isaiah and said, "Sir, I need to see your ID and boarding pass." Was Nicole doing the wrong thing? Isaiah took his wallet out of his pocket and handed over his driver's license and boarding pass without comment. Nicole examined them. "Dr. Isaiah Monroe," she read. The word doctor made her pause. "What kind of doctorate?" Victor asked. "Probably an online degree in aircraft maintenance. That doesn't give him security clearance," he said. "I have a PhD in aeronautical engineering from MIT, Isaiah said quietly. "And because I consult on aircraft design, I have security clearance from both Boeing and the FAA, he replied. Victor laughed with the same sharp, cruel voice. "Sure, I'm sure you can prove it, right? Because anyone can claim to be an engineer. Do you have any documents? A company badge? Anything to prove you're not just some guy downloading plans from the dark web?" He asked a barrage of questions. Isaiah reached into his bag. His movements were slow and deliberate, aware that a sudden gesture could be misinterpreted in this tense environment. He pulled out a lanyard with a hard plastic ID card attached. The card was thick, had a security chip embedded in it, and featured multiple holograms. It read, "Dr. Isaiah Monroe, Technical Director, SkyTech Aerospace, FAA Security Clearance Level 6, Boeing Authorized Consultant." Nicole's eyes widened as she examined the card. "This card looks real, sir," she replied. Victor latched onto the word looks. "But how can we know it's real? These things can be fake. I want the captain to verify this. I want him to call Boeing, the FAA, or whoever this guy says he is to confirm it," he said. Victor seemed to be aware of everything, but he couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept that this could be an engineer dressed in sportswear. That's why he kept wanting to go after Isaiah. Isaiah closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The situation was spiraling out of control, and Victor's ego wouldn't let him back down. The man was stuck in his own story, and admitting he was wrong would mean admitting he had racially profiled a passenger and accused him of being a terrorist. "Nicole," Isaiah said calmly, "if the captain wants to verify my identity, I understand, but I'd appreciate it if he did it quickly. I know about the hydraulic sensor problem that delayed this flight, and I want to help fix it." He felt the need to explain himself. Isaiah found himself in a situation he never wanted to be in. Victor's face turned purple. Now he's admitting he knew about the malfunction. "Don't you understand what's happening? He sabotaged the plane and now he's acting like an expert," he continued, and a voice came from behind. "Shut up, Victor." A man in his 30s, wearing a Continental Airways pilot's uniform, was standing in the aisle. He had 3 stripes on his shoulder. According to his name tag, this man was First Captain Martinez. Victor stammered. "Excuse me, did you just tell me to shut up?" Martinez repeated. "I said shut up." He looked at Isaiah, then at the badge in Nicole's hand. The expression on his face went from anger to shock, then to admiration. "Dr. Monroe? Isaiah Monroe from SkyTech?" he asked. Isaiah nodded. "That's me." Martinez turned to Nicole. "Give me that badge." He examined it closely, then took out his phone and photographed it. "Give me 30 seconds, please," he said. He walked to the front of the cabin, phone pressed to his ear. The cabin watched him in tense silence. Victor, for once, didn't look confident. "Who is he? What is he doing?" he asked. Nicole whispered, "He's calling the captain." Less than a minute later, Martinez returned. His face wore a carefully neutral expression, but there was something in his eyes, amusement, relief. "Nicole," Martinez said, "Captain Rivers wants Dr. Monroe to come to the cockpit. Did you see that?" Victor shouted. "They're going to arrest him." Victor was thrilled. For a moment he thought the opportunity he wanted had come to him. Martinez turned to Victor with a look of contempt he could barely hide. "No, Mr. Ashford. The captain wants to ask Dr. Monroe if he can help us fix the hydraulic sensor problem that has kept us grounded for the last 90 minutes, he replied. Turning to Isaiah, he asked, "Dr. Monroe, if you don't mind, the captain says you wrote the manual for the sensor system we're having trouble with. Would you help us?" Isaiah stood up and took his tablet. "I'd be happy to help," he replied. He paused as he passed Victor. "Mr. Ashford, I hope this flight gives you time to reflect on the assumptions you make based on people's appearances. You might find it educational," he said. Victor's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Isaiah, aware that everyone in the cabin was watching him, followed Martinez into the cockpit. He heard whispers spreading through the rows. "Is he an expert? Did that man just accuse an engineer of terrorism? Oh my God, this is going to go viral on social media." Martinez stopped at the cockpit door. "Dr. Monroe, I apologize for what happened out there. That passenger completely overstepped his bounds," he said, trying to calm the situation. "It's not your fault," Isaiah said, "but thank you for intervening." Martinez knocked on the cockpit door in a specific way. When the door opened, Captain Daniel Rivers appeared, a man in his 50s with gray hair and the worn face of someone who had spent 30 years in aviation. Rivers stood up as Isaiah entered. "Dr. Monroe, I'm Captain Rivers. I've read all your articles on the 787 system architecture. It's an honor to meet you. I wish it were under better circumstances," expressing his respect and affection for him. It was a beautiful moment, a beautiful, meaningful moment without any discrimination. Isaiah shook his hand. "The honor is mine, Captain. Martinez said you're having trouble with the hydraulic pressure sensor." Rivers opened the maintenance log on the flight management computer. "Error code 2847, he said. "The ground crew has been working on it for an hour. They want to replace the entire sensor, which means it will take at least another 2 hours." Isaiah leaned toward the screen and asked, "May I?" The captain replied, "Please," granting permission. Isaiah accessed the diagnostic interface, the same system he had helped design, and opened the sensor's historical data. He studied the readings for about 30 seconds. "This is a false positive," Isaiah said. "Moisture from the rain is affecting the electrical connection in the L4 junction box. The sensor itself is fine. All the ground crew needs to do is spray contact cleaner on the connection and reattach the cable harness. It'll be done in 5 minutes." This was welcome news. No one would have to wait 2 hours. Rivers looked at First Officer Martinez. "Can you relay this to maintenance?" he asked. Martinez pressed his radio and said, "Already taken care of." Rivers turned to Isaiah. "Dr. Monroe, I have to ask, why were you sitting in economy class? SkyTech probably has a corporate account with us," he asked politely. Isaiah smiled slightly. "A system error downgraded my reservation," he said. "I decided to accept it. I wanted to experience economy class firsthand," he added. "What an experience," Rivers said dryly. "I heard what that passenger accused you of." "This," he continued, but Isaiah cut him off. "It's happened before. It will happen again," he replied briefly. "The important thing is to get these people to Zurich." Martinez returned from the radio. "The maintenance crew has approved it. They're spraying the connection right now. They say we'll be ready in 3 minutes. "Great," said Rivers. He looked at Isaiah. "Dr. Monroe, I can't thank you enough. You saved us from a 2-hour delay," he said politely. "Just doing my job," said Isaiah. "Now I need to get back to my seat before Mr. Ashford thinks I've abandoned the cockpit." Rivers' face darkened. "About Mr. Ashford? What he did there? The false accusation? Profiling? That's unacceptable. I want to file a formal complaint," he said. His real goal was to put a stop to the discrimination against Isaiah. "I understand," Isaiah replied, "but right now I just want to get to Zurich. We can deal with the rest later," he answered politely. "I understand," Rivers said. "But Dr. Monroe, when the plane lands, I'll make sure the airline knows exactly who that man harassed today, and I'll make sure there are consequences." Isaiah nodded. "I'll leave that to your discretion, Captain," he said. "If you had suffered this discrimination, could you have remained so calm?" He walked back down the cabin. The atmosphere had completely changed. Passengers who had looked at him suspiciously an hour ago now looked at him with respect, and most felt ashamed. When he reached row 28, Victor was sitting upright in his seat, staring straight ahead. The doctor didn't look at Isaiah as he moved to the window seat. "It's been taken care of," Isaiah said casually. "We should be taking off in a few minutes," he added. Victor said nothing. Mrs. Chen in seat 28C leaned over. "Dr. Monroe, I'm so sorry about what happened to you. That man should be ashamed of himself," she said, showing her support for Isaiah. "Thank you," said Isaiah. "But please call me Isaiah." The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have some great news. Our maintenance crew has resolved the technical issue, and we have cleared for takeoff. We apologize for the delay, and thank you for your patience. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for takeoff." As the plane began to move, Isaiah took out his tablet and returned to his work. He noticed that Victor, sitting next to him, was silent and angry. The flight to Zurich would be very long, but for Victor Ashford, the real nightmare was just beginning. Because when they landed, he would learn that the man he had belittled was not just an engineer. He was about to experience one of the shocks of his life. He was the engineer who had just completed the purchase of the company Prestige Properties International, and Isaiah Monroe had an excellent memory. The Boeing 787 rose smoothly through the rain clouds and emerged into bright sunlight at 35,000 feet. The cabin lights dimmed for the transatlantic flight, and most passengers began to entertain themselves with books, tablets, or the in-flight entertainment system. However, in row 28, tension was palpably spreading throughout the cabin. Victor Ashford sat stiffly in seat 28B. He had folded the jacket of his expensive suit over his lap and was staring at the back of the seat in front of him. Isaiah hadn't spoken a word since returning from the cockpit 30 minutes earlier. Yet Isaiah could sense the anger radiating from him like heat from an oven. But he gave no sign of it. Isaiah was studying the technical specifications of the new wing design SkyTech was developing on his tablet. Occasionally glancing out the window at the cloud formations below, he focused both on his work and on the uncomfortable situation he found himself in. Miss Chen in seat 28C had fallen asleep, her head resting on the travel pillow. An hour into the flight, Victor finally spoke. "You humiliated me there," he muttered quietly. Isaiah looked up from his tablet. "I didn't humiliate you, Mr. Ashford. You humiliated yourself." Victor clenched his jaw. "You could have said who you were from the start," he replied. Isaiah answered calmly but firmly. "Before you assumed I was a mechanic? Before you said I made no economic contribution? Before you accused me of terrorism?" he asked, actually questioning the accusations previously leveled at him. Victor's face flushed. "I was concerned about security. Any reasonable person would be suspicious of someone examining the flight plans," he replied. Isaiah said, "Instead of jumping to conclusions based on someone's clothing, if you had politely asked a question, you would have gotten an answer." "You're wearing a hooded sweatshirt on an international flight," Victor replied. "You look like you're going to a basketball game, not Zurich." Isaiah put down his tablet and turned to Victor. "Mr. Ashford, I'm going to explain something to you that you clearly don't understand. My clothes don't define my worth. My profession doesn't define my worth. And your opinions about me certainly don't define my worth," he said. His message to Victor was clear. He couldn't judge people around him based on their appearance. He pointed to his hoodie. "It's comfortable. I'm going to be sitting in a metal tube for 8 hours. I chose comfort over appearance. It's a personal choice, not a character flaw," he said, giving a polite response despite the humiliation he had endured. Victor opened his mouth to respond, but Isaiah continued. "When you saw me in this hoodie, you made assumptions. You decided I was beneath you. You invaded my armrest, violated my legroom, and talked to me like I was something you scraped off your shoe. And when I didn't immediately bow to your superiority, you tried to use airport security as a weapon against me," he said. Victor replied, "I was worried." "You were offended," Isaiah corrected. "You were offended that someone who didn't meet your standards of wealth and appearance was sitting next to you in economy class. And when it became clear that I have authority and power, instead of apologizing, you're sitting here angry because I humiliated you," he finished. Victor's hands clenched the armrests. "You're twisting this. If that's what you're implying, I'm not racist. I have black colleagues. I donate to charities," Isaiah replied in a weary voice. "Mr. Ashford, I'm not interested in your defensive references. What interests me is whether you learned anything from this experience." Victor asked, "Am I supposed to assume that everyone in hooded clothing is a secret billionaire?" Victor didn't seem convinced. Somewhere in his mind, he was still thinking of ways to belittle Isaiah. Isaiah smiled, but there was no warmth in his smile. "No. You must learn that every person deserves basic respect, regardless of their appearance or what you know about them." "That flight attendant you yelled at? She works 2 jobs to pay for her mother's medical care. The mechanic you dismissed? He's the reason this plane is in the air. Everyone has a story, Mr. Ashford. Everyone has value. Your mistake was thinking that value could be measured by a suit," he said. "You have a lot to learn." Victor was silent for a long time. Then reluctantly, "Okay, maybe I was hasty in my judgment. But you have to admit, the appearance was alarming." "Appearance," Isaiah repeated. He shook his head. "Mr. Ashford, do you know why I became an engineer?" he asked. Victor seemed surprised by the question. "Because you're good at math?" he replied. Isaiah said, "My father was an aircraft mechanic. He worked on commercial jets for 30 years. When he came home, he had grease under his fingernails and jet fuel on his clothes. And people like you walked past him every day, unaware that he was the one ensuring your planes flew safely." The answer was astonishing. It hit Victor like a slap in the face. Isaiah's voice softened with memories. "He died when I was 16. There was an engine failure on a plane he wasn't working on. Another airline, another maintenance crew had cut corners. At his funeral, not a single passenger came to thank him for making thousands of flights safe. But dozens of his colleagues came. They knew his worth." Victor shifted uncomfortably. "I became an engineer to honor him," Isaiah continued, "to improve the systems he worked on, to make flying safer for everyone. And I spent 20 years doing just that. But I never forgot what it was like to watch my father be looked down upon by people who thought ticket prices were more important than the man who kept them alive," he said, letting some of what was inside him out. A storm was brewing somewhere inside Isaiah. I didn't know, Victor said quietly. You didn't ask, Isaiah replied. You saw the hoodie and made up your mind, he said, pointing out Victor's mistake, his error, to his face once again. The cabin fell silent again. Flight attendant Nicole approached with the beverage cart. Dr. Monroe, she said in a warm voice, may I offer you something? Sparkling water, juice, coffee, mineral water would be great, thank you. Nicole filled a glass with mineral water with a sincere smile, then turned to Victor. What would you like, sir? Gin and tonic, Victor said curtly. Nicole's smile faded slightly. Of course. As Nicole walked away, Isaiah noticed Victor watching her with an expression he couldn't quite understand. Definitely anger. But there was something else too. Perhaps curiosity. Did you really design some of the parts of this plane? Victor finally asked. I consulted on the air circulation system, cabin pressure optimization, and hydraulic systems, Isaiah said, among other things. Victor examined the cabin interior as if seeing it for the first time. And you, do you fly on commercial planes? In economy class? Why wouldn't I? I designed it to be comfortable. If it isn't, I need to know so I can improve it. Isaiah took a sip of his water. Besides, it keeps me grounded, pun intended. Victor smiled slightly at this. Then his expression turned serious. Dr. Monroe, I owe you an apology. A real apology. What I did there, the accusations, the profiling, it was all wrong. I was angry about the demotion, angry about the delay, and I took it out on you because, his voice trailed off, because you could, Isaiah finished. Because you thought I was weak. Yes, Victor admitted, and I'm sorry. Isaiah studied him. The apology seemed sincere, but he suspected Victor was apologizing more to protect himself than out of genuine remorse. Still, it was a start. Apology accepted, Isaiah said. But Mr. Ashford, an apology is just words. What matters is whether your behavior will change. Victor slowly shook his head. You're right. He paused. Can I ask you something? How do you deal with this? The assumptions, the profiling. This can't be the first time. No, Isaiah said, and it won't be the last. But I've learned that what I can control is my response. I can't control your prejudices, but I can control whether they define me. He pointed to his tablet. This job? This matters. The planes I design safely carry millions of people every year. That's my focus, not the opinions of people who judge a book by its cover. Victor was silent for a moment, then said, I run a real estate company, Prestige Properties International. We develop luxury properties worldwide. I know, Isaiah said. Victor raised his eyebrows. You know my company? I looked you up while you were yelling at the flight attendant, Isaiah said with a slight smile. You're quite well known in real estate circles. As I recall, you have a billion-dollar portfolio. Victor looked pleased, even if he didn't want to. Actually, 1.8 billion. We're in an expansion phase. We've signed a deal for a development project in Dubai, and we're looking at properties in Singapore, and… He paused. Why am I telling you this? Because you're proud of your work, Isaiah said. You should be. Building things, creating value. That's important work. Victor seemed a little relieved. Do you really think so? I mean, I know real estate isn't as scientific as aerospace engineering. Every industry has its own complexities, Isaiah said. I couldn't do what you do, and you couldn't design an airplane engine. Everyone has their own area of expertise. After boarding the plane, Victor began to see Isaiah not as an obstacle or a threat, but as a human being. For 20 minutes, they talked about their respective industries and found common ground in the challenges of managing large projects and dealing with difficult clients. Isaiah began to think the flight might end on a positive note. Then Victor's phone rang. He took it out of his pocket and looked at the screen with furrowed brows. This is strange. I have an email marked urgent from my CFO. He opened the email and began to read. Isaiah watched Victor's face slowly drain of color. No, Victor whispered. No, this can't be true. Is everything okay? Isaiah asked. Victor looked up, his eyes wide with shock. My company. Someone is buying my company. A hostile takeover. SkyTech Aerospace has prepared the necessary documents to acquire Prestige Properties for $2.2 billion. He scrolled through the email frantically. This doesn't make sense. SkyTech is an aerospace company. Why would they want a real estate company? Isaiah placed his tablet very carefully on the table. Actually, it makes perfect sense. SkyTech is diversifying our portfolio. We're looking for strategic acquisitions in complementary sectors. Victor stared at him blankly. How do you know SkyTech's plans? Because, Isaiah said quietly, I'm the CTO of SkyTech Aerospace. I'm on the acquisition committee, and Prestige Properties has been on our target list for 6 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Victor looked at Isaiah, opening and closing his mouth without making a sound. Are you with SkyTech? I'm not with SkyTech, Isaiah said. I founded it. I'm the majority shareholder. And yes, we are acquiring your company. The board approved it 3 weeks ago. We'll be announcing it publicly tomorrow. Victor's phone slipped from his hand and fell between them. SkyTech is yours? 58%, Isaiah confirmed. The rest is held by employees and institutional investors. Victor's face turned gray with pallor. But you told me you were an engineer. I am an engineer, Isaiah said. That's what I do. The business side is secondary. While I focus on design and innovation, there are excellent people running the operations. Victor looked like he was about to be sick. The acquisition, the email says SkyTech plans to completely restructure Prestige's leadership team. That's right, Isaiah confirmed. We'll integrate Prestige into our aviation real estate division. We'll develop properties near airports, build maintenance facilities, that sort of thing. It's a natural synergy. My position, Victor's voice was almost a whisper. All senior executives will be evaluated, Isaiah said. We have a transition team assessing cultural fit, performance metrics, and alignment with SkyTech's values. After a moment's silence, he added, values like treating people with respect, regardless of their position or appearance. Victor's eyes widened in horrified understanding. You're going to fire me. I'll leave that decision to the transition team, Isaiah said calmly. But Mr. Ashford, I'll be honest with you. Your behavior today will definitely be part of their assessment. You can't do this, Victor began, then stopped. This is revenge. You're punishing me for what happened on the plane. I'm protecting my investment, Isaiah corrected. SkyTech is known for excellence and integrity. We cannot have senior executives who treat me, Nicole, the ground crew, and probably dozens of people you've fired over the years the way you've treated them. Victor's hands were shaking. Please, Dr. Monroe. Isaiah, I apologized. I said I was wrong. You can't ruin my career over a single mistake. A single mistake. Isaiah raised his eyebrows. Mr. Ashford, in the last 2 hours you berated a flight attendant, accused a passenger of being a terrorist based on racial prejudice, and showed a fundamental lack of respect for anyone you perceive as beneath your status. That's not a single mistake. That's a pattern of behavior. I was having a bad day. Character, Isaiah cut him off, is defined by how you treat people when you're having a bad day. When you're stressed, tired, irritable, your true self emerges. And today, Mr. Ashford, I saw your true self. It wasn't impressive. Victor slumped in his seat, his fighting spirit gone. What do you want from me? I don't want anything from you, Isaiah said. What I want is for my father's memory to mean something. For every mechanic, every flight attendant, every hardworking person in an expensive suit who gets fired to know that their worth isn't defined by other people's prejudices. He picked up his tablet. The transition team will contact you within 72 hours of the acquisition announcement. They will evaluate your performance, leadership style, and fit with our culture. If you don't want to lose your job, I suggest you spend that time thinking about how you treat people. Victor sat in stunned silence for the rest of the flight. When meal service came, he didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He just stared at the back of the seat in front of him, watching his career crumble in his mind. Isaiah, however, returned to his work. He had a wing design to finalize, and personal dramas, even satisfying personal dramas, couldn't distract him from what mattered, his job. As they descended into Zurich, Ms. Chen woke up and stretched. Did I miss anything interesting? She asked cheerfully. Isaiah and Victor said no at the same time. Ms. Chen looked at them both, sensed the tension, and wisely returned to her magazine. The plane landed smoothly at Zurich Airport. As the plane taxied to the gate, the captain's voice was heard one last time over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zurich. On behalf of the entire crew, we apologize again for the delay in New York. In particular, I would like to thank Dr. Isaiah Monroe, whose expertise helped us quickly resolve our technical issue. Dr. Monroe, the aviation community is very fortunate to have someone like you. Everyone in the cabin turned their heads toward row 28. The passengers began to applaud. Some stood up, craning their necks to see the man who had saved their flight. Victor sank deeper into his seat, trying to disappear. Isaiah nodded politely at the captain's thanks, then gathered his belongings. As he disembarked, he stopped at the cockpit door and shook Captain Rivers' hand. Thank you, Captain, but that wasn't necessary. It was absolutely necessary, Rivers said firmly. And Dr. Monroe? I've filed a formal complaint about Mr. Ashford. The airline will launch an investigation. Thank you, Isaiah said. I wish you a safe flight to New York. He crossed the jet bridge into the terminal, leaving Victor and his crumbling empire behind. But the story wasn't over yet. There was still a long way to go. 3 months after flight CA-815 landed in Zurich, Victor Ashford sat in a sterile conference room on the 42nd floor of SkyTech Aerospace's headquarters in Chicago. The view from the windows was spectacular. Lake Michigan stretched to the horizon, the city skyline glistening in the afternoon sun. But Victor wasn't admiring the view. Despite the powerful air conditioning, his shirt was soaked with sweat. Seated at the table were the 3 people who held his professional fate in their hands. SkyTech's Director of Human Resources, Dr. Rebecca Chen, General Counsel Marcus Webb, and David Kim, head of the Prestige Properties Transition Team. At the head of the table sat Dr. Isaiah Monroe, silently and intently poring over a thick file. Victor hadn't seen Isaiah since that flight. He had hoped, desperately hoped, that the incident would be forgotten under the mountain of paperwork and due diligence that came with a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. He should have known better. "Mr. Ashford," Rebecca Chen began, her voice professionally neutral, "thank you for joining us today. As you know, SkyTech completed its acquisition of Prestige Properties 6 weeks ago. We are conducting a comprehensive review of all senior executives to determine organizational fit and retention decisions." Victor nodded, his throat dry. "I understand. And I want to state that I am fully committed to this transition process. Prestige has been my life for 15 years. I built that company from scratch. You were hired as Vice President of Sales 12 years ago," Marcus Webb interrupted, glancing at his notes. 7 years ago, you were promoted to CEO following the founder's retirement. So technically, you didn't build the company, you inherited it." Victor's jaw tightened. "I grew it. Revenue increased by 340% under my leadership. We entered 6 new markets. I created value for shareholders." "You did," David Kim acknowledged. "Your financial performance is truly impressive. Your sales figures, customer retention rate, and profit margin are very strong." A glimmer of hope flickered inside Victor. "Then, of course. However," Kim continued, "our evaluation isn't based solely on financial metrics. SkyTech places great importance on cultural fit, leadership style, and alignment with our core values." The hope faded as quickly as it had appeared. Rebecca pulled out another document. "Mr. Ashford, we interviewed 47 employees at Prestige Properties, from senior management to administrative staff and the building maintenance team. Would you like to hear our findings?" Victor didn't want to know, but he nodded anyway. "The most frequently used words to describe your management style were demanding, intimidating, condescending, and," this word came up frequently, "classist." Rebecca looked up from her notes. "Many employees reported that you regularly made derogatory comments about support staff, referred to certain clients as below our brand, and created a workplace culture where fear was the primary motivator." "That's not true," Victor began. "We have documentation," Marcus said, sliding a folder across the table. "Emails where you referred to cleaning staff as assistants and demanded they be invisible during working hours. A memo instructing your team to weed out customers who didn't meet certain wealth thresholds. Performance reviews where you criticized employees for being too friendly with contractors." Victor opened the folder. His own words stared back at him, accusatory and undeniable. "I was maintaining standards," Victor said weakly. "Prestige Properties serves high-income individuals. We need to project a certain image." "Mr. Ashford," Isaiah spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. "Do you remember our conversation on the flight to Zurich?" Victor's stomach churned. "Yes. I told you that character is defined by how you treat people under stress." "Do you remember what else I said?" "That everyone has value," Victor whispered. "Everyone has value," Isaiah repeated. "That cleaner you want to be invisible?" "His name is Robert Martinez. He's been working at Prestige for 9 years. While his wife works as a nurse during the day, he works the night shift so he can take care of his daughter during the day. He sent 2 children to college with his salary." Isaiah pulled out another file. "The contractor you were told not to be friendly to? That's Sarah Chen. No relation to Dr. Chen here. She runs a small electrical company. She's been working for Prestige for 6 years, always on time, always under budget. She employs 12 other immigrants like herself and provides them with a path to financial stability." He looked directly at Victor. "These aren't invisible people, Mr. Ashford. They are people with stories, families, dreams, and you treated them like props in your privileged theater." Victor felt something break inside him. This time it wasn't anger, but shame. Deep, genuine shame. "I didn't see it that way," Victor said quietly. "I was so focused on my job, on protecting our reputation, that His voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "You missed what really matters." Isaiah finished the sentence for him. "Success isn't just about profit margins. It's about what you build, who you support along the way, and what kind of legacy you leave behind." Rebecca leaned forward. "Mr. Ashford, SkyTech's core values are excellence, integrity, and respect. Based on our assessment, we don't believe your leadership style aligns with those values." Victor closed his eyes. He had known this would happen the moment he saw Isaiah in that conference room. "So I'm being fired." "Yes," said Marcus. "Effective immediately. Your severance package will be in accordance with your contract. 6 months' salary, vested stock options, and continued benefits for 1 year. This is more generous than I expected," Victor admitted. "We're not being ruthless," Isaiah said. "We just want our company's leadership to reflect the culture we want to build." David Kim slid another document across the table. However, Mr. Ashford, we have an offer to make. Victor looked up, startled. An offer? SkyTech is launching a new initiative called Redesigned Leadership, Kim explained. This program is designed to help managers who rely on old management styles transition to more inclusive, empathetic leadership approaches. If you are willing to participate fully by publicly acknowledging your past failures, we will extend your severance to 12 months and provide career counseling. Victor looked at the document. What do you want me to do? Publicly admit I was a bad boss? We want you to publicly admit that your leadership style caused harm, Rebecca corrected. And we want you to help us prevent other managers from making the same mistakes. Your story will be a powerful teaching tool, including for those on flight CA-815. Victor felt his face flush. You want me to talk about the plane incident? In front of people? The story's already out there, Marcus said. Someone on that flight posted a video. The video went viral. You're already a cautionary tale. This is your chance to control the narrative and really learn from this. Victor wasn't aware of the video. With trembling hands, he pulled out his phone and searched for his name. The results made him sick. Hundreds of articles, tweets, videos. Real estate CEO accuses aviation engineer of racial profiling. Airline passengers' ordeal backfires spectacularly. Chaos on Flight 815. His personal cell phone had been ringing non-stop for months. Victor had ignored it, changed his number, hidden from the world. But the internet never forgets. I'm ruined, Victor whispered. You're being humble, Isaiah corrected him. There's a difference. Being ruined means everything is over. Being humble means you have a choice about what happens next. Victor looked at Isaiah, the man he had profiled, rejected and accused of terrorism. The man who had the power to make Victor's life even worse forever, but instead offered him a way out. Why? Victor asked. Why are you offering me anything? You could have kicked me out and never thought about me again. Isaiah was silent for a moment. Because my father believed in redemption, he said mistakes are inevitable, but what matters is whether you learn from them. I'm giving you a chance to learn, Mr. Ashford. How you use that chance is up to you. Victor looked at the document in front of him. 12 months salary, career counseling, a chance to turn his humiliation into something useful. All he had to do was admit he was wrong, in front of everyone, over and over. His pride screamed at him to refuse, to tell them all to go to hell, to walk out with his head held high. But he thought of Robert Martinez, the man working nights to support his family. He thought of Sarah Chen, the woman who started a business to help other immigrants. He thought of all the people he had ignored. And he thought of Isaiah calmly repairing the plane's systems while Victor sat in his economy class seat, convinced Isaiah was a terrorist. I'll do it, Victor said quietly. I'll join your program. I'll tell my story. He swallowed. I'll try to be better. Rebecca smiled, the first warm expression she'd shown during the entire meeting. That's all we ask, Mr. Ashford. The first session is next Tuesday. We'll send you the details. The meeting was over. Victor stood up with shaky legs and gathered his things. As he walked toward the door, Isaiah called out, Mr. Ashford. Victor turned. Yes? For what it's worth, Isaiah said, I believe people can change. I've seen it. The real question is whether you want to change enough to do the uncomfortable work. Victor nodded without speaking and left the conference room. 6 months later, Victor stood in front of a room filled with executives attending a leadership development seminar. His hands trembled slightly as he held the microphone, but his voice was steady. My name is Victor Ashford, he began. And I'm here to tell you about the day I learned that my prejudices could cost an innocent man his freedom and certainly cost me my career. He told them everything. The flight, the hooded sweatshirt, the assumptions, the accusations, the humiliation he felt when Isaiah's identity was revealed. And he told them what happened next. The video that went viral, getting fired, months of unemployment and soul-searching. I thought I was a successful CEO, Victor said. I had money, a title, a corner office, but I had failed in the most important areas: character, empathy, basic human values. He looked at the audience. Some of you are sitting there thinking, I would never do what he did. I'm not like that. Maybe you're right, but I want you to ask yourselves this. How do you treat people who can't help your career? The janitor? The administrative assistant? The contractor? Because that's where your true character shows. The room was silent. Dr. Isaiah Monroe could have destroyed me, Victor continued. He had every right to. Instead, he gave me a chance to learn, a chance to grow, to become a better person. And I'm standing here today because I took that chance. He paused for a moment. I'm not the CEO anymore. Now I'm a consultant, working with companies to identify and eliminate toxic leadership behaviors. I earn a fraction of what I used to, but I sleep better at night. And when people I work with see me, they don't hide. After the seminar, several executives approached Victor. Some thanked him for his honesty. Others shared stories about their own mistakes and growth. And one person stood in the back of the room, arms crossed, watching. Isaiah Monroe. When the crowd dispersed, Isaiah approached. Dr. Monroe, Victor said, surprised. I didn't know you were here. I like to check in on the program from time to time, Isaiah said. to see how the participants are doing. How am I doing? Victor asked. Isaiah considered the question. Better. Not perfect, but better. You're doing your job. I owe you everything, said Victor. This second chance, this opportunity to rebuild. You don't owe me anything, Isaiah interrupted. You owe it to yourself, to keep growing. And you owe it to the people you hurt, to truly change. Victor nodded. I'm trying, every day. That's all anyone can ask for, Isaiah said. He extended his hand. Carry on, Mr. Ashford. They shook hands. Two men who had started as strangers, become enemies, and finally found a path to mutual respect. As Isaiah walked away, Victor continued gathering his things. His phone rang. It was a message from his ex-wife Jennifer, who had divorced him 6 months after the plane crash. The message read, I saw your seminar video online. I'm proud of you for trying to change. This is the man I married. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was an acknowledgement. And for Victor, that was enough. He had lost his company, his marriage, and his reputation, but he had found something more valuable, his humanity. And it all started with a hooded man sitting in seat 28A. That man taught him that value isn't measured by wealth, titles, or the cut of a suit. Value is measured by how you treat people when you think no one is watching, because sometimes the person you don't care about is the most important person. 2 years after the crash of Flight CA-815, Isaiah Monroe stood on the podium at the International Aviation Safety Conference in Singapore, addressing an audience of 3,000 engineers, pilots, and industry leaders from around the world. Behind him, on a giant screen, graphics displayed striking improvements in safety standards, employee satisfaction, and innovation output, alongside the SkyTech Aerospace logo. When I founded SkyTech 20 years ago, Isaiah began, his voice echoing easily in the quiet hall. I had a simple philosophy: build things that keep people safe and treat the people who build them with respect. Everything else is secondary. He moved to the next slide and showed a photo of his father dressed in a mechanic's uniform, standing proudly next to a Boeing 747. This is my father, James Monroe. He worked as an aircraft mechanic for 30 years. He never designed an engine or wrote a system manual, but because he worked with these systems every day, he understood them better than most engineers. He kept planes safe, he saved passengers' lives, and most of those passengers never knew his name. Isaiah paused, his voice thickening with emotion. He died in a plane crash caused by another airline's maintenance error. That airline had cut corners to reduce costs, underestimated its mechanics, and prioritized profit over safety. His death taught me that every person in this industry matters. From the CEO to the baggage handler, we are all part of the same mission, to get people home safely. The audience was spellbound. 2 years ago, I had an experience that reminded me why this matters. Isaiah moved to the next slide, a photo of an economy-class cabin. I was on a commercial flight to Zurich. Due to a booking error, I was sitting in economy class next to a man who, judging by my appearance, thought I didn't belong there. Whispers spread through the crowd. Many had heard this story. It had become legendary in aviation circles. This man judged me by my hoodie, my worn sneakers, and my skin color. He treated me with contempt. When our flight was delayed due to a technical issue, he accused me of sabotage because I was studying aircraft schematics on my tablet. Isaiah waited for his listeners to digest this. The technical problem was a hydraulic sensor failure. I had helped design that system. I could have fixed it immediately, but because this man created such a hostile environment, I hesitated to reveal my identity to the crew. His prejudice delayed that flight completely. With Victor Ashford's permission, he moved to a new slide showing his photo. This is Victor Ashford. He was the CEO of Prestige Properties International at the time. He was the man who profiled me, accused me, and wanted me thrown off the plane. 3 months later, when my company acquired his company, I had the power to completely destroy his career. The audience leaned forward, waiting. I didn't destroy him, Isaiah said. I offered him a choice. Join our leadership development program and learn from his mistakes, or leave with standard severance. He chose to learn. And today, Victor Ashford is one of our most effective consultants, teaching other executives about the cost of unconscious bias and toxic leadership. Isaiah smiled. Some said I was too soft. They said I should have made an example of him. But I learned this. Punishment without rehabilitation only creates pain. Real change requires accountability and opportunity. Victor was held accountable for his actions. He lost his position, his reputation was damaged, and he had to face the consequences of his behavior. But he was also given an opportunity to grow, and he took advantage of that opportunity. A hand went up from the audience. Isaiah nodded. Dr. Monroe, a woman asked, how do you balance accountability with compassion? When someone has done harm, how do you know they deserve a second chance? Isaiah considered the question carefully. You look at whether the person is willing to do the hard work. Victor didn't just apologize. He underwent 6 months of intensive leadership training. He participated in restorative justice sessions with the employees he harmed. He publicly acknowledged his failures. That's not easy. It requires humility and a genuine commitment to change. Another hand went up. But doesn't giving a second chance send the message that bad behavior is tolerated? Only if there are no consequences, Isaiah said. Victor lost his job. He lost his reputation. He went from a multi-million-dollar salary to a consultant's salary. Those are real consequences. But consequences don't have to mean permanent removal from professional life. If someone shows real growth, why wouldn't we want them to make a positive contribution to the industry? He moved to another slide showing SkyTech's diversity and inclusion metrics. Since implementing our Leadership Reimagined program, employee engagement has increased by 47%. Innovation output has increased by 62%. Why? Because when people feel respected and valued, they do their best work. It's not complicated. After the keynote, dozens of industry leaders approached Isaiah, wanting to implement similar programs in their companies. He asked each one the same question: are you committed to real change, or just better public relations? The honest ones admitted it was both. Our shareholders care about accountability and public perception, but our employees deserve respect. If we can deliver both, we should. Then work on it, Isaiah told them. Real cultural change is expensive, uncomfortable, and slow, but it's worth it. That evening, Isaiah sat in his hotel room, watching Singapore's glittering skyline as he answered his emails. One email caught his attention. The subject line read, "Thanks from an unexpected source." He opened the email. "Dr. Monroe, I am Victor Ashford. I wanted to let you know that I have been hired as the Director of Leadership Development at Harvard Business School. They want me to create a program that educates MBA students about ethical leadership and the long-term costs of toxic workplace culture. I never imagined that my biggest professional failure would lead to the most meaningful work of my career, but here we are. I spent the last 2 years learning that leadership is not about authority or control, but about service. That it's about elevating people rather than putting them down. That it's about accepting that every person, regardless of job title or appearance, has an inherent value. You taught me this in the worst possible way, as the person I misjudged so badly that it caused me to lose everything. But you also taught me that redemption is possible if you try. I'm attaching a copy of the course syllabus. The first case study is our flight to Zurich. With your permission, I'd like to use this to teach future generations of business leaders what happens when prejudice meets reality. Thank you for seeing the potential in me that I couldn't see myself. And thank you for showing me that power used with compassion is more effective than power used with cruelty. With respect and gratitude, Victor Ashford." Isaiah read the email twice, then opened the attached course syllabus. The course was titled Leadership, Character, and the Hidden Costs of Prejudice. The reading list included academic articles on unconscious biases, case studies on toxic workplace cultures, and Isaiah smiled when he saw this, several of his own published articles on systems thinking and organizational culture. He wrote a reply: "Victor, congratulations on your position at Harvard. This work is exactly where it belongs, shaping the next generation of leaders before they make the mistakes we did. I give you permission to use our story. In fact, I would be honored if this story helps even one student show their future colleagues the respect everyone deserves. Keep up the good work. It's important. Isaiah?" He pressed send, then stood up and walked to the window to look out at the city below. Somewhere down there, thousands of people were boarding planes, trusting that engineers, technicians, pilots, and cabin crew would keep them safe. Most would never know the names of the people providing that safety, but Isaiah knew, and he made sure those people knew their value. 3 years after the incident, Isaiah received an invitation for Victor to speak at his first class at Harvard. He accepted. Standing at the back of the lecture hall, Isaiah watched Victor's class. The man who had once been full of arrogance and prejudice was now recounting his failures with genuine humility. Victor told the MBA students, "I want you to understand that I didn't lose my job because I had a bad day. I lost it because I had a bad character, and an unchecked bad character becomes a toxic culture." He showed the viral video taken during the flight, which had been viewed over 20 million times. The students watched in uncomfortable silence as Victor berated flight attendant Nicole, accused Isaiah of terrorism, and generally made a fool of himself. When the video ended, Victor said, "The man I accused? The man I dismissively called a mechanic? He was Dr. Isaiah Monroe, one of the world's most respected aerospace engineers. He had designed some of the parts of the plane I was sitting in." The students shifted uncomfortably. "But here's the thing," Victor continued. "Even if he had been a mechanic, my behavior would have been wrong. Even if he had been a student flying home on a cheap ticket, my behavior would have been wrong. Because human dignity is not dependent on job title, wealth, or education. Human dignity is something you are born with. A student raised his hand. Mr. Ashford, have you ever considered that your prejudice might be influenced by race? Victor did not hesitate. Absolutely. I am a white man with a privileged background. I grew up in environments where people who looked like me held power, and people who looked like Dr. Monroe served us. I internalized the idea that success looked a certain way. Expensive suits, certain accents, certain cultural markers. He paused. When Dr. Monroe didn't fit that mold, my brain filled in the gaps with stereotypes. Repairman, laborer, potential threat. These weren't conscious thoughts, but they guided my behavior. Unconscious biases that guide behavior are just as harmful as conscious racism. The class discussion continued for another hour. Students debated responsibility, atonement, and the systemic forces that create people like old Victor. After class, a few students approached Isaiah. Monroe, said a young woman, I'm a first-generation college student. I work 2 jobs to afford this program. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong here because I don't dress like the others, and I don't talk like the others. Isaiah smiled. Once I wore a hooded sweatshirt to a billion-dollar business meeting. Belong where you want to belong. Make them adapt to you. Another student, a young black man, asked, how do you deal with that? Profiling? Assumptions? Doesn't that make you angry? It makes me determined, Isaiah said. Getting angry means letting their prejudices control my emotions. Being determined means I control my response. I'm building important things. I'm creating opportunities for people like you. And when someone shows me their character, good or bad, I believe it and act accordingly. The student nodded thoughtfully. That evening, Isaiah and Victor had dinner at a small restaurant near campus. You know, Victor said over coffee, I still think about that flight constantly. The moment Captain Rivers read your ID and I realized who you were, I've never felt so small in my life. You weren't small, Isaiah said. You were human. Flawed, biased, and wrong, but human. What you did after that moment is what defined you. Victor smiled sadly. I lost everything. My company, my marriage, my reputation. So what did you gain? Victor thought about the question. Perspective, humility, purpose. The old me wouldn't have understood the value of those things. But now, he shrugged. I sleep better. I don't hate what I see when I look in the mirror. That's worth more than any corner office. Jennifer texted me last week, Victor added. My ex-wife. She said she's proud of the work I'm doing. We're not getting back together, but it's important to know she doesn't hate me anymore. Isaiah raised his coffee cup. Second chances, he said. Victor clinked his cup against Isaiah's. To people who give second chances when they don't have to, he replied. 5 years after the crash of Flight CA-815, this story had become a case study taught in business schools worldwide. The video had been viewed over 50 million times. Victor's story of survival had been featured in the Harvard Business Review, The Atlantic, and even a viral TED Talk. But for Isaiah, the most meaningful outcome was smaller and quieter. Robert Martinez, the janitor Victor once wanted to be invisible around, was now the facility manager at SkyTech's Chicago headquarters. His daughter had graduated from MIT on a full scholarship from the SkyTech Foundation. Electrical contractor Sarah Chen had now signed a major contract with SkyTech and employed 42 people. Flight attendant Nicole, who had been scolded by Victor, was now the cabin crew training director at Continental Airways and was implementing empathy and stress reduction programs across the airline. Captain Daniel Rivers had been promoted to chief pilot and had made cultural sensitivity training mandatory for the entire cockpit crew. These were the victories that mattered to Isaiah. Not winning public acclaim or viral fame, but lives quietly healed by choosing compassion over cruelty. On the 5th anniversary of the flight, Isaiah received a package. Inside was a framed photograph, the moment from the viral video showing the horror on Victor's face when he discovered who Isaiah was. Beneath the photo was a plaque that read, "Character is revealed in moments of crisis. Growth is revealed in humility. Thank you for showing me both. Victor Ashford." Isaiah hung the photo in his SkyTech office, not as a trophy of victory, but as a reminder of what can be achieved when responsibility and opportunity come together. Because ultimately that flight from New York to Zurich wasn't just about one man's prejudice or another's patience, it was about the choice we all face when given power, to use it to punish or to transform. Isaiah chose transformation. And in doing so, he proved that the most sophisticated technology isn't found in aircraft systems or engineering schematics. This technology lies in the simple yet revolutionary act of treating every person with respect, from the CEO in the boardroom to the mechanic on the tarmac, from the first-class passenger to the last-row passenger. Everyone matters, everyone has value, everyone deserves the necessary care and attention. And sometimes, the person in the hoodie is the one who will change your life if you're brave enough to let them.